Matthew 24. Now, as Jesus was going out of the temple courts and walking away, his disciples came to him, came to show him the temple building. And he said to them, "Do you see these things? I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. All will be torn down." As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us when these things will happen, and what will be the sign of the coming of the end of the age?" Jesus answered them, "Watch out that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will mislead many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Make sure that you are not alarmed, for this must happen, but the end is still to come. For nations will rise up in arms against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of birth pains. Then they will hand you over to be persecuted and to kill you. You will be hated by all nations because of my name. Then many will be led into sin, and they will betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many, and because lawlessness will increase so much, the love of many will grow cold. But the person who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole inhabited earth as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken about by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. The one on the roof must not come down to take anything out of his house, and the one in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing their babies in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, for there will be great suffering unlike anything that has happened from the beginning of the world until now, and even ever will happen. And if those days had not been cut short, no one would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then, if if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Christ,' or 'There he is,' do not believe him. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Remember, I have told you ahead of time. So then, if if someone says to you, 'Look, he is in the wilderness,' do not go out. Or, 'Look, he is in the inner room,' do not believe him. For just like the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so the coming of man will be. Whenever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the suffering of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give light, and the stars will fall from heaven, the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes on earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man arriving on the clouds with power and great glory, and he will send his angels with a loud trumpet blast, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Learn the parable from the fig tree. Whenever its branches become tender and put out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also you, when you see all these things, know that he is right. He is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth. This generation will not pass away until all the things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But as for that day and hour, no one knows it, not even the angels in heaven, except the Father alone. For just like the days of Noah were, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. For in those days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and took them all away. It will be the same in the coming of the Son of Man. Then there will be 2 men in the field, one will be taken and one left. There will be 2 women grinding grain with the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay alert, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have been alert, and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is the faithful and wise slave, whom the master has put in charge of his house, to give the other slaves their food at the proper time? Blessed is that slave who the father finds at work when he comes. I tell you the truth, the master will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if if that evil slave should say to himself, my master is staying away a long time, and he begins to beat his fellow slaves and to eat and drink with drunkards, then the master of the slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, and an hour which he does not foresee, and will cut him in 2 and assign his place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Good times, everybody. Good times. We're in Matthew, and so we were talking about why did Jesus say that he wished that it would be not on a Sabbath day. Well, on one level, we have to discern when this is happening. Okay? So he says, do you see these things here? So the disciples point out the temple courts. They're pointing to the temple building. They're pointing it out as magnificent. He just got done talking about honor and prestige and all of that stuff. And now here they're looking at something that brings and points to honor and prestige. And Jesus says, do you see all these things? I tell you the truth, not one stone will be left on another. All will be torn down. So when is Jesus talking about? I believe he's talking about the event that leads to the tearing down of the temple they're standing in front of. That's what I think he's talking about. As they're sitting on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him and said, tell us, okay, you said, so tell us when all this will happen, and what will be the sign of the coming of the end of the age. Jesus answered, watch out that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name and saying, I am the Christ, and they will mislead you. And you will hear of wars and rumors of war. Make sure you're not alarmed. These things must happen, but the end is still to come. Okay, so wars and rumors of more war must happen, but the end is still to come. So that's not the end. Wars and rumors of war is not the end. Nations are going to rise up of nations, kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birthplaces. What's the beginning of birthplaces or birth pains? Famines, earthquakes, and wars. Okay, so we're still in the beginning of birth pains on that level of the end coming. So, then they will hand you over to be persecuted and will kill you. You will be hated by all nations. Okay, he is talking to the disciples who are standing right in front of them. So, you after this destruction that is coming of the temple, you will be handed over to be killed by nations. Then many will be led into sin, and they will destroy one another and hate one another, and many false prophets will appear and deceive. Many will, because of lawlessness, increase so much, the love of many will grow cold, but the person who endures to the end will be saved. A nice point here. The person who endures to the end will be saved. To the end of what? To the end of your life, my friend. To the end, to all of it. Endures to the end will be saved. Jesus was not claiming here that salvation is by works, but simply arguing that the genuine faith evidenced itself in the persistence through events of the worst trials. Yes. The gospel of the kingdom will be preached throughout the world's inhabitants on the earth as a testimony to the nations, and then the end will come. Okay, so we have the end will come after the testimony is through all nations. So they're still sitting there. We're still talking about the temple. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken about in Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. So we're talking about the abomination of desolation standing in the temple that he just said is going to be destroyed. We cannot say, well, we'll have to wait for a third temple to be built for this to be fulfilled, because Jesus said this temple will be torn down. Now, he said not one stone will be left. So the fact that there's a wailing wall still there, does that mean that Jesus lied? No, he's talking about the language of total destruction. And the temple is not useful for worship as it stands today. So it's true. So prior to 70 AD, when the temple destroyed, means that's when the abomination of desolation happened. It had to have happened in that time frame. Now, we can argue about what it was and what it wasn't. Then those who in Judea must flee to the mountains. The one who is on the roof must come down, and the one to take anything out of his house, and the one in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. Woe to the one who is pregnant in those days, or nursing babies in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. Okay, why would you not want to have it on the Sabbath? Well, the same way you wouldn't want to have it in winter, or the same way you wouldn't want to be a pregnant or nursing mother. It makes it more difficult. It will be a more difficult thing to do. It will make your flight more difficult. I think that's all he is saying, is he is listing together things that will make it more difficult and lead to greater suffering. So if you're pregnant, when you have to flee, there's greater suffering. If you're nursing a baby, when you have to flee, there's greater suffering. If you are gathered together in the place of worship when it happens, greater suffering. I think that's all the references there. The other thing is, as long as the temple was still in place, the disciples were gathering daily in the temple, it said, until persecution happens. I mean, as the book of Acts starts, it says they gathered together daily in the temple courts. So they were gathering in the temple courts. The idea of whether we should or shouldn't have continued to observe Sabbath is a different question. I don't think Jesus is addressing it here. I think he is talking about the destruction of the temple solely. And you don't want the destruction on a Sabbath day or in winter, or if you're pregnant. It makes fleeing for your life a more difficult thing to overcome. Another thing might be if you're all at the temple and everybody is trying to flee at once, there's more chaos. You're not at home. You don't have your things. You may not have everyone together all in one place. There's lots of reasons why that may be. Or you maybe are in the synagogues on the Sabbath instead of being in the temple. Okay. For then there will be greater suffering, unlike anything that's ever happened from the beginning of the world until now or will ever happen. Okay, this kind of language is used often to describe something that is really bad. Nothing has ever been like it before. Nothing is ever like it after. I think it's just a statement of talking about the severity of it. I don't think we have to say, oh, well, we have to measure everything that ever happened and make sure that this was absolutely true, that it was. No, it's just a way of talking about it. All right, so passing out fruit, passing out hugs, passing out soup. Okay, I was just seeing if there's anything else that was in there. And Supersonic, welcome. Altus, any thoughts on that? Am I making sense of where I'm leading? I think Jesus is just talking about when the destruction of the temple happens, it's going to be horrible, and there's certain things that could make it worse. The circumstances in life could make it worse. And if it had not been cut short, no one would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Then if, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ. So after the destruction of the temple, we've gone back to, here is the destruction. Here is the Christ here. So after you're scattered and you're the destruction of the temple, you're going to expect Christ's return. That's why people are going to say, look, he's over here, he's over here, he's over here, or I know who he is. Kenny, tip of the cap, friend. Tip of the cap. Doesn't make any sense to call out Sabbath there, in your opinion. Yeah. Well, that's fine. But what I'm thinking is, yeah, maybe you see it differently, but like I said, he's just saying it in comparison to things that make it difficult, because it says that flight may not be in winter. Would you agree that fleeing in winter would be more difficult than fleeing at other times? Yes. How much more difficult? Relatively. So Sabbath would be... So it's not like, oh my goodness, this is... Or, earth shattering. Like, You could also say it another way. Woe that it would be before the harvest comes, because you don't have food to take with you when you flee. Yeah, fleeing on the Sabbath. He could have said, may you not be out of your home or something even then, but call out the Sabbath if you weren't going to observe it even in 60. Well, they are observing it in 60 as far as because as we read in the book of Acts, on the Sabbath day, Paul goes to the synagogue. So they are observing it in 60. They absolutely are. Fleeing on the Sabbath would be difficult because, according to Sabbath law, you can't take anything with you. Okay, so that would be the observation of not taking anything with you would be the difficulty. Okay, yeah, then that would make sense. Banana woke up in a really good mood today. Good. Also, you're finally going to be able to take a shower this week. I remembered that camping showers are a thing. So you got one. Yay! Omega, weren't they observing the Sabbath day in the Diary of Anne Frank? Probably, but Anne Frank was Jewish, so that would make sense that she was. Altus, but if you don't observe Sabbath, then they can take anything with them. Yeah, so the Gentiles could, but the Gentiles aren't going to be in the temple when the temple is destroyed or in Jerusalem. So it's only going to be impacting those who are Jewish, who are in Jerusalem when the temple's destroyed. They're hopefully it's not on Sabbath, so they can take things with them. Yeah. So he expected his community to observe Sabbath until the destruction of the temple. So there's a difference between whether or not the Jewish Christians observe Sabbath or not, because later on it talks about the difference of one observes one day and another, and some don't observe any, and no day is more than another. So they absolutely are observing the Sabbath throughout the book of Acts. And then they are also gathering on Sunday as well. And they are also gathering daily in the temple courts. So he doesn't expect the Jewish or the Gentile believers to observe Sabbath. They don't need to observe Sabbath because they're not Jewish. Observing the Sabbath, we need to clarify what we're talking about. Altus is talking not about the recognizing and resting on a day. He's talking about all of the Jewish observance of food preparation, distances of how far you can travel, doing no work, all of those kinds of things. Fully in answer to your question, I'm simply saying what Jesus is talking about is the destruction of the temple. He's not talking about observance of Sabbath here. Picasso, Sabbath is a day where you let God provide for you rather than working to collect things for yourself as insurance. For example, in the Sabbath year, it was forbidden to work the fields, but you could eat what the earth provided, and everyone could eat from whatever the earth provided throughout Israel. They never practiced this, even though it was commanded. Yeah. So, yeah, we get into a whole bunch of observance of what did Jesus expect and what was the things that actually happened and what did we inherit and how do we apply things. And the binding and loosing, I think, applies as well. But, yeah, let's keep going or we're going to be stuck here all day on one topic. So it's going to be cut short, the destruction of Jerusalem, so that some people will survive. Afterwards, there's going to be false people claiming to be the Messiah. So if someone says, look here, don't go. Don't believe it. Someone comes to the east and flashes to the west, so it will be like when the Son of Man will return. Wherever the corpse is, there will the vultures will gather. Immediately after the suffering of those days, there will be darkness, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven. The power of heaven will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. All the tribes of earth will mourn. they will see the Son of Man arriving in the clouds with power and glory, and he will send his angels with a loud trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds. Okay, so immediately this will happen, but now we have to say, well, did that happen? Did the sun go dark and the moon not give its light, and stars and powers in heaven shaken? Well, if we're looking for the sun, moon, and stars as a representative of celestial things, then we could say, no, it didn't happen. But if we are talking about the spiritual beings which are represented there and what's going on, then maybe it did happen. But so immediately there will be cleaning house in the heavenly realm when the destruction of the temple happens. That's how I think we see this. Others will say, no, this didn't happen, so there has to be a different temple, so a different temple has to be destroyed because this didn't accompany the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. So we get a lot of people that disagree about what and when and all of this stuff. Then the sign of man will come and he will appear in heaven. So we all agree that from 30 on has not happened. We did not see Jesus coming because we're supposed to see him coming in the clouds with the power and glory. So the Son of Man arriving on the clouds, which is the Ancient of Days imagery in the Old Testament from Daniel. He's returning. He's taking on that imagery and trumpet blast and learn the parable of the fig tree. What's the parable of the fig tree? When the branch becomes tender and it puts out leaves, you know that summer is here. So also, when you see these things, know that he is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass away until these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So, other than the return, then you will see the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Up to that point, we could say, yeah, it happened, and this generation did not pass away. So is he talking about totality, or is he talking about the signs of the things? And what does he mean by this generation will not pass away before these things? There's a whole lot of debate around that. I'm not trying to solve that. But for the day and the hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven. The Father alone knows. Yes, Papstio has not occurred. Okay. Picasso, Israel was called to be a nation of sojourners, people who are not home but awaiting their true home and thus not bound by the worldly cares and possessions. St. Dionysius writes about how he witnessed the worldwide darkness that took place on the day of Christ's crucifixion. Oh, interesting. Interesting. I'm not familiar with that. Altus, they still had items when they moved. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all traveled with massive amounts of items and supplies. Oh, yeah. Okay. And the land of Israel is their home. The prophecy to be sojourners was in Egypt and during exiles, not when they are in Israel. Well, there is the group, and I'm trying to remember who it is. One of the tribes continues to be a sojourner and travel around and never settle in the land. They continually live in booths, and I believe that they are praised for that as well. Altus, I can't remember who that is. There's one clan, I should say, not a full tribe, one clan that continued to do that. Not arguing with you, just pointing out another observation. I love observations when we can go, oh, but what about this? So then we get a phrase that people are often quoting nowadays. For just like in the days of Noah, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. For in those days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving to marriage until the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about the flood came and took them away. It will be the same in the coming of the Son of Man. So it's going to be a surprise. It's going to happen unexpectedly. It's not going to be obvious that it's tomorrow or it's today or it's a week from now. That's the point there. But this phrasing gets taken, I think, totally out of context often. And then the next section also is not understood today the way it historically has. There will be two men in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. There will be two women grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left. Historically, the church has said the one who is taken is the one taken away to destruction, not the one who is left being the one for destruction and the one who is righteous taken away. No, the historical understanding is the one taken away is the one taken away to destruction. Therefore be alert, because you do not know on what day the Lord will come. Here's the point of the whole thing. Here's what I think. Be alert. You're not going to know. Just like an owner would, who knew a guy was going to break in, would be ready. You don't know when a burglar is going to break in. You don't know when the Son of Man is going to return. So always be ready. Who then is the faithful and wise slave whom the master put in charge of his household to give the others food in their proper time? Blessed is the slave who finds his master at work, instead of being lazy, saying, oh, my master stayed away a long time. He's never going to return. I'm going to do whatever I want and not do his wishes and not serve him. That's what we don't want to do. Get complacent, believe he is not returning. That's going to be the danger. That's going to be the danger. And some have and continue to say, well, he's going to return and he's not coming. And will we ever see him? So he will cut him into pieces and place him with the hypocrites and those who are the weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, as a long passage, often I think misunderstood. I also think it's cryptic. We're not supposed to understand everything that's going on there. It is not for us to know. So is this only about 70 AD? Well, it can be about 70 AD for the people who are there, and also could have a future fulfillment. Now, part of it cannot be seen as being fulfilled. At least nobody that I know thinks that Christ returned in 70 AD when the destruction of the temple happened. It said those were birth pains, but also in this passage is the triumphal return of the coming in the clouds, the same way that Jesus is going to go up. He's going to return in the clouds and the trumpet declaring him. So that part, I don't know anyone that claims happened in 70 AD. So even if partially fulfilled, not all fulfilled, and he was giving the full parameter of everything that will happen from beginning until return, it's there. So we can have part of it done, part of it to come. Some will say, no, it's all to come. And I have a hard time seeing that because of a lot of the language, and then it would have been of little value for Jesus to give all this explanation to them other than to say, it ain't for you to know, and don't worry about it. Why does he warn them about the destruction of the temple unless it was for them to know, to be prepared, to understand that was something coming and was going to be not a great thing? Canaan is a sign of Picasso of the greater promise, which is the fullness of the nation of God. This is a pattern of God's promise. He makes a promise and comes with a small sign and a grander sign in fulfilling in the eschaton. All of God's promises will become fulfilled. Picasso, interesting. I have never heard of this interpretation of those being taken for destruction. You will look into this. Yes. Altus, maybe you're feeling spicy today. In the days of Noah, the wicked were the ones who were taken from the earth, and the righteous stayed and inherited the earth. People, however, view the verse as the righteous being swept away and the wicked being left to dwell on earth. Yeah, and the reference there to Noah being the clue that the righteous are left on earth and that the evil ones, the unrighteous, are swept away. So if we're using the language of Noah, we would think that the sweeping away of the ones taken would be the ones evil to destruction, as in the days of Noah. Interesting observation there. Because I was thinking otherwise I would have said he didn't say where they're going. He just said they're taken away, just like in the days of Noah. They are taken away. You think it? Yeah. I was just trying to think of where was the reference to the vultures. That's what I'm trying to find here. Thought it was when he was talking about let no one deceive you and say the Christ is here. Was that in the last passage? No, that wasn't. That was all the woes. Picasso, you kind of assume that them being taken is a reference to God taking Enoch to heaven, but this is probably a wrong idea. I picked it up in early coming to Christianity. You need to pray and perhaps consult your spiritual fathers about this. Yeah. Like I said, there, and when it just says taken, so there's a lot of, you need to interpret and understand what does that mean. Okay, we're in the nurse. Where was the, can't find the vulture passage. I wanted to go back and read what it actually said. Ah, here it is. There it is. Okay. Believe him. Okay, I think all he is saying is you're looking for the signs that the person is truly the Son of Man over here and over there, but those people who are claiming it do not actually have evidence of it. So the evidence of a corpse is vultures. So if they're making a claim and there's no evidence towards it, I think that's what the vultures part here is, because he's talking about if someone says to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go. Or look, he's in the inner room, do not believe him. You need to see, I mean, it's going to be a quick thing that's going to happen, and you need to look for the evidence of it. So I think that's what the vultures reference is there, not to bodies, perhaps, in this passage, being killed in this passage, just an overall, if you want to know where there's a dead body, you look for vultures. If you want to know where the Son of Man is, you need to look for the signs of the Son of Man, not listen to someone tell you he's over here. I think that's the point he was making there. Yeah, so we just keep doing what has always been done, and yet people actually try to call us Protestants. No, you're not Protestants. Yeah, they did not have a Reformation per se, but it doesn't mean that there had not been reforms of any kind, because there was corruption, and unless that corruption is still there from the same time that the part of the rest of the church was dealing with corruption, because there was a Reformation that split from the Catholic Church, and then the Catholic Church put reforms in as well to change and correct some stuff. So. Yeah, you think Eastern Orthodox is very interesting. Some crossover to oldest Jewish tradition. Okay. I think we covered everything there. Altus, I don't know that I fully answered your question, nor do I think I can fully answer your question any further. Like I said, I don't think Jesus is addressing the issue of worship in the temple or worship on the Sabbath day. I think he's talking about the difficulty of enduring the time frame of the destruction of the temple.